Tracy Sable tonight on EWTN News Nightly, targeting Catholics. The Ortega regime continues to persecute the church in Nicaragua. How U.S. lawmakers are responding. Charges dropped. An update on a story in Germany regarding the late Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Mounting protests. People in France continue to speak out against a new plan to raise the retirement age. And a path toward peace. A Vatican leader tells us how the Holy See is seeking to end global conflicts. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega continues to escalate efforts to silence and persecute those who speak out against his regime, including the Catholic Church and church leaders, moves which prompted the Vatican to shut down its embassy. And now U.S. lawmakers are taking note. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with more on the hearing, taking a deeper look into the crisis. Eric.
Well, Tracy, good evening. First of all, we want to apologize for that high-pitched noise that you're hearing. Apparently, someone tried to go out through the wrong door here at the Capitol and set off the alarm. But back to our story, New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith, who is a leading congressional voice of human rights, chaired the hearing. I did speak with him before the hearing, and he hopes that the testimony will highlight the abuses by Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega and his government. He also hopes that it'll pressure the Biden administration and other world leaders to act.
There needs to be real action. You know, you can't coddle a dictatorship and expect anything but for the abuse to accelerate and get significantly worse. And that's what's happening with Ortega.
During the hearing, former political prisoners gave emotional testimony.
My story is the story of hundreds of Nicaragua who decided to defend freedom, justice, and democracy. As political prisoner, I suffer arbitrary detention, arbitrary jail, inhumane treatment, threats, and constant interrogations.
Once inside the notorious prison El Chipote, we were kept in complete isolation from the outside world. At some point, I was even placed in a punishment cell simply for my decision to fast and pray in audible voice.
Ortega's government continues to detain, imprison, and torture numerous Catholic leaders, including several priests, along with Bishop Rolando Alvarez.
No one close to Bishop Alvarez Lago knows where he is. His family has not seen him since he refused to board the plane to the U.S. I am deeply concerned for his safety, and I'm asking that the Ortega regime make a proof of life.
The Ortega government has also repressed Catholic radio and television stations and driven the religious order Missionaries of Charity from the country.
They don't let you worship. They don't let you go out and have your processions, you know, whenever there's few people gathering, and then it's just, you cannot pray. You cannot pray the rosary. That is a reason for you to be incarcerated.
Witnesses called on world leaders to condemn Ortega's actions. Pope Francis recently called for peaceful coexistence in the country, but the Holy Father has also spoken out against President Ortega and his regime, prompting Nicaragua to cut off diplomatic ties with the Holy See.
It's time for the international community to wake up to this historic evil and for the Biden administration to take action.
Folks, imagine that, not being able to pray the rosary. That is something else. Now, in late November, the U.S. State Department designated Nicaragua as a country of particular concern for religious freedom violations. Now, but witnesses and lawmakers are demanding that the Biden administration take more action against the Ortega regime. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Well, members of the Trump administration rip on President Joe Biden for weakening national security. Former cabinet member Linda McMahon says the Biden administration has abdicated its leadership, and that is just one of the concerns. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Tracy, the America First Policy Institute made national security the focus of a meeting today just blocks away from the White House at the Army-Navy Club here in D.C. China and the southern border, two major concerns, and the fingers of blame point directly at the White House.
The America First National Security Symposium, addressing the dangers facing America. One of the panelists, Pam Bondi, former Attorney General for the state of Florida.
The biggest threat to me is drugs for kids. The drugs that are flowing into our country, the human trafficking, and China. China's producing these drugs that are coming into our country and killing our children.
And how's the current administration handling the problem?
The Biden administration isn't doing anything. If anything, they're doing the opposite. They're letting people flow into our country through the Mexican border who are bringing drugs into our country. They're traffickers.
And when it comes to China, former Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant warned.
They want to dominate the world. This is the world dominance we haven't seen since the 1930s, and the Chinese intend to do that one step at a time, and you see the deterioration of our society that's occurring on a daily basis. They use TikTok to be able to manage that.
TikTok CEO, in fact, testified today before congressional lawmakers. The social media app has 150 million American users, but critics contend it threatens national security.
Now, TikTok itself is not available in mainland China. We're headquartered in Los Angeles and in Singapore, and we have 7,000 employees in the U.S. today.
We do not trust TikTok will ever embrace American values. Values for freedom, human rights, and innovation. TikTok has repeatedly chosen the path for more control, more surveillance, and more manipulation. Your platform should be banned.
Meanwhile, before heading off to Canada for a bilateral meeting, President Joe Biden spent today celebrating the anniversary of Obamacare.
I think most people agree the most consequential piece of healthcare legislation since the creation of Medicare and Medicaid in 1965.
Now, you may recall it was Obamacare that tried to force Catholic organizations to provide birth control. And right now, Catholic leaders are very concerned about this administration protecting healthcare workers' conscience rights. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Prosecutors in Germany have dropped the case of an alleged cover-up against the late Pope Benedict. The allegation was regarding his handling of 4 cases of clergy abuse. It dated back to his time as Archbishop of Munich. Pope Benedict had strongly denied the claim. He also had sent 82 pages of notes and observations to investigators. Poland and Slovakia will soon become the first NATO nations to deliver fighter jets to Ukraine. Slovakia's defense ministry announced delivery of 4 MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine this morning. Polish President Andrzej Duda says 4 additional jets from Poland could be transferred to Ukraine within days, and that a dozen or more would be handed over after servicing. The move follows a long-standing Ukrainian request for warplanes and military backing ahead of an anticipated counteroffensive. And joining us tonight with the latest is Polish Consul General Adrian Kubicki. Mr. Kubicki, great to have you with us today. This is a major step. Absolutely. This is a major step for your country. What led to this decision, sir?
I hope that this is a major step in terms of changing this dynamic of the war, or actually enhancing Ukrainians and successfully pushing back the Russian invaders once and for good. We know that Ukrainians need some of the means to pursue their defense. They're very brave and courageous. They're fighting for over a year already. The only thing they need right now is a proper equipment. Not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, Western allies decided to send to Ukraine Western tanks, Western manufactured tanks, including the United States of America. Right now, Poland decided to make this next bold step, providing Ukrainian with the post-Soviet jets, fighter jets, the equipment, the jets that they know very well. They know how to operate those jets. With this hope that they will successfully defend Ukraine, push back Russian invaders, and put stop on this war. Poland stands where we stand from the first minute, the moment when this invasion started, that Ukraine needs to be supported, and Russia is a serious threat not only to Ukraine, but broader to the entire Western world.
According to a recent report by the BBC, Russia has since threatened to destroy any fighter jets given to Ukraine by its allies. What's your reaction to this?
Well, obviously, this will meet a certain response from Russia. We must expect it. This is the ongoing war, and obviously Russia does everything what is possible to target this capacity, Ukrainian capacity, military capacity, the military bases, some of the equipment. So this is something that we must expect. But so far, looking at the Russian progress, or rather lack of progress, they have not been very successful. And we know with certain amount of belief and certainty that with the right equipment, Ukrainians know how to use it. They know what to do with it. They are very efficient in using the equipment provided to them. That they will be able to continuing this great program of pushing back Russians out of Ukrainian territories. Hopefully, this will be a game changer in that aspect, and also we hope that other countries will join our efforts in providing Ukraine with what they need in order to protect themselves and ourselves.
We have about a minute left or so, but in addition to the delivery of planes to Ukraine, I know Poland has already become home, even on a temporary basis, to more than 10 million Ukrainian refugees. Mr. Kubicki, can you talk to us about how Poland is managing this influx of new people and what that says about your country opening the door to millions of refugees there?
We decided to facilitate and become a hub for Ukrainian needs in all aspects, including this humanitarian aspect. For a couple of millions of Ukrainians, some of them traveling back and forth, we open up our borders. We allowed Ukrainians to legally work. We accept a couple of hundreds of thousands Ukrainian children into our schools, into our education system. Ukrainians have access to the health system. In exchange, they are fully capable in contributing and moving on with their lives, live their lives, work and do whatever they need to keep their dignity, but also to become a fully assimilated members of our society, of our nation. And I think that this is completely new blueprint in terms of handling refugee crisis. Perhaps it can be implemented somewhere else in the globe. It's been something that was an effort of many Polish people, most of Polish people, in fact, and also the state of Poland. But it's working out very well, and we are well geared to continuing providing that support for Ukrainians for as long as they need.
Polish Consul General Adrian Kubicki, thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The United Kingdom says that it will send armor-piercing ammunition to Ukraine. The Kremlin responds, calling the plan stupidity, confirmed at the highest official level.
Или глупость? Нет, это уже глупость, подтвержденная на официальном уровне в Британии.
Russia's foreign ministry official also says the move is more evidence of Western aggression toward Moscow, and the West does not want peace in Ukraine. The ammunition from the UK was developed during the Cold War and could destroy Russian tanks. So Switzerland's central bank raises a key interest rate, this on the heels of a multi-billion-dollar rescue of the country's second biggest bank.
Weitreichende Liquiditätshilfe verschaffte die nötige Zeit, eine Lösung
Over the past weekend, UBS agreed to buy Credit Suisse for $3.2 billion. According to the Swiss Central Bank, the deal put a halt to the banking crisis. Credit Suisse's collapse comes more than a week after U.S.-based Silicon Valley Bank crashed, sending shockwaves throughout the banking sector. Well, Honduras announces plans to establish diplomatic ties with China, implying an end to relations with Taiwan.
原则是国际大义，人心所向，大势所趋。
Beijing says that it is ready to establish relations with a Latin American country. Honduras's foreign minister is reportedly in China for set talks, a switch would leave Taiwan recognized by only 13 countries. Well, turning now to France, where protests continue after a controversial law raised the retirement age. This marks the first mass protest since President Emmanuel Macron approved the bill without a vote from Parliament. Train stations in Marseille have been blocked by labor unions, suspending services until further notice. 30% of flights at Paris's international airport were also canceled. We have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including fighting for the unborn. Lawmakers in one U.S. state move closer to passing a major pro-life measure. And we remember the auxiliary bishop from New Orleans who died following a long illness. Lawmakers in Kansas are one step closer to passing the Born Alive Protection Bill. If passed, abortionists will be required to care for the life of a baby when an abortion procedure results in a live birth. Critics say the measure is unnecessary and sheds a bad light on abortions. Lawmakers in the North Dakota House pass a school gender pronoun bill. The measure bans schools and state agencies from using pronouns that do not reflect a person's biological sex. Supporters say that it eases burdens on teachers. The measure now heads to the governor's desk. A new report reveals anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. rose by 36% last year. The Anti-Defamation League tallied nearly 3,700 cases of assault, harassment, or vandalism spanning the entire United States, marking the highest number on record since the first audit back in 1979. Visibly, Orthodox Jews were targeted in more than half of the assaults. And joining us tonight to weigh in is Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Managing Director of the Coalition for Jewish Values. Rabbi, great to have you on again. This report is certainly alarming, to say the least. Are you surprised by these findings?
Thank you for having me again, and sadly, talking about such a sad thing to be speaking about in general, but sadly, it is not surprising at all. It is simply reflecting experience that we in the Orthodox community are well aware of. As you just cited, over half the violent assaults are against visibly Orthodox Jews. And it's very sad that a lot of the so-called experts in fighting anti-Semitism seem to not wish to listen to not only the knowledge and the learning of the Orthodox community, but also the experience that we have around us every day. This has finally shown it in real numbers, and we hope people will respond accordingly.
Rabbi Menken, how concerned are you for your community, and what can be done about this?
Well, it's obvious that there's a need to speak back and obviously this is part of that whole range of values issues and attacks on all religious communities, but it obviously is especially targeting. I mean, the Jews have been the canary in the coal mine for centuries, if not millennia, and this is just more of the same. Am I concerned about our overall survival? Look how well the Jewish community is doing after the Holocaust. But think about the horrors of the Holocaust and what increasing anti-Semitism means less than a century later for the country that's harboring it.
Yeah, I want to switch gears here just slightly here for a minute. I want to talk about a recent article that was in the New York Times, which claimed that ancient Judaism recognizes a variety of genders. Rabbi, your thoughts on this? I mean, is this claim reflective of Jewish law?
Talk about your distortions that could give rise to more anti-Semitism. That article was frankly unbelievable. What the Talmud recognizes is biology, that aberrations happen, and they're very unfortunate. A woman born without a womb, a man who has suffered castration. Those are some of the cases that he's describing as alternate genders. None of these were about choices. All of these are about biology. If you want to know what Judaism teaches, you can't get past the first chapter of the first book without reading that man and woman are distinct creations of God. It's really that simple.
Why do you think this was printed in the New York Times? I mean, what's behind this?
This is obviously the New York Times is part of this on this woke agenda. It's why they're targeting the Orthodox Jewish community at a time of this Orthodox Jewish anti-Orthodox violence. And it's also, I mean, these are one of the couples that was featured in a news story about this is a couple in the state of Missouri who has been fighting against values, against the Jewish community. And now, actually, we just formed a chapter of our organization, Coalition for Jewish Values, in the state of Missouri. And the left has gone absolutely apoplectic with rage that there should be an alternate voice promoting genuine Jewish values in place of, like I said, a woman who believes that it's promoting Jewish values to promote transgender, quote unquote, care for preteen children.
Rabbi, before you let go, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you about this story. A group of Jewish parents, they're suing the state of California. They want equal access to special needs education for their children who are in Orthodox schools. Your thoughts on all of this?
You know, it's amazing that we go from a story about a parent who insists that it's appropriate to put transgender hormones in a preteen child versus parents who simply want to give special education to their children in the school of their choice. This is one of these cases where, thankfully, so much of the pro-values community in the United States has recognized what the Orthodox Jewish community has advocated for all along, which is our ability to choose the schools to which we send our kids. Those three parents are suing to have access to the same special education funding that California will give to any public school or any private school unless the child attends a sectarian school. And that, of course, is an anti-religious bias that no parent should support.
We're going to leave it right there. Rabbi, always great to have you on and get your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Shepherd to the World reaction after the death of a church leader in Louisiana. Plus, a closer look at the role the Vatican plays in bringing peace to areas of conflict. An auxiliary bishop in New Orleans has died following a lengthy illness. Bishop Fernand Sherry III was hospitalized last June and was receiving kidney treatment several times a week. One local faith leader said, quote, "We saw him not only as a vocal advocate for African-American Catholics, but also as a shepherd to the world." Bishop Sherry served as auxiliary bishop since 2015. He was 71 years old. Well, the Holy See continues to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the election of Pope Francis. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colm Flynn recently sat down with Archbishop Paul Gallagher, who works closely with the Holy Father on a number of issues, including efforts to bring peace and stability to the world.
And is this something that the Holy Father and the Holy See would like to try and use their diplomatic efforts towards more in the future, as we see the power shift in the Catholic Church going from the northern to the southern hemisphere, and many countries across Africa and in Latin America where they could use help in restoring peace and maintaining peace?
Well, it's not just initiatives from Rome or by the Holy Father. Obviously, the Holy See encourages the local churches, the local church leadership to engage with the political authorities when there are conflicts and come and bring people together. And that's very often that's the big problem. Who has the power to convoke both government authorities and opposition and protesters? And that's quite often is the church, because the church remains a credible institution in many countries of the world.
And can you talk a bit about the fruits of some of the previous papal visits? Maybe when we look back at the past 10 years of Pope Francis's pontificate, I'm thinking primarily 2 years ago, I think this month, the incredible trip, historic trip to the nation of Iraq. Yeah. And I remember speaking to you on the plane on the return journey, and you were quite emotional when you were recounting that trip and thinking of the people that you met and such hardship they'd been through.
I think we were also emotional because the trip to Iraq involved certain security considerations and certain security risks. And so when we were on the way back, we were all quite happy to be on our way home safe and sound. And that was also true for the Holy Father. No, the Iraq trip was important, perhaps the most important visit of the pontificate so far, because the Pope had already made, shall we say, significant gestures to the Sunni Muslim community, particularly his friendship and his relationship with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Al-Taib. And they had then signed the document on human fraternity during the Pope's visit to Abu Dhabi. But that was the Sunni world. The Shia world, understandably, may have felt unintentionally that it was being excluded. So the fact that the Pope said, we'll go to Iraq, I want to go to Najaf, and I want to meet Sheikh al-Sistani, the leader of the Shia Muslims in Iraq, and some would say the most prominent Shia leader in the world. And this was a bold gesture, a bold step. And it really was reciprocated by al-Sistani, who was multiple gestures of respect, of affection, and of esteem for the Holy Father. So that was, I think, a remarkably important visit.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.